Hello and welcome to Cate's Hour of Miracles. I hope this recording is coming through clear, and just deep gratitude for everyone at Awakening Together for what they do, for assisting minds to wake up to reality, which is right here, right now. It's nowhere else. We've got it. We're awakened. We've got an awakened mind within us. And so what we're seeing, we're looking at what is false. We're trying to see what we're not so that we can experience ourselves as who we truly are. And today I'm going to be reading out of A Course in Miracles, chapter 31, which is the section 5, which is called Self-Concept versus Self. And this is one of my favourite sections of the Course because it talks clearly about how we have made up a total concept of ourselves. And this part of A Course in Miracles really marries in with the teachings of Ramana Nisargadatta, in that it points directly at a self that isn't real and a self that is real. And was really pleased when I read this section and felt very connected to this area of A Course in Miracles from what I had experienced in my own mind. So what happened to me was I had three particular experiences on the way to awakening. I had a revelation experience where my mind went into the beautiful peace of God. I was in bed asleep and I had an experience of that. I woke up and it was just gorgeous, just lovely, pure bliss. There was no thought, and that was the first time I'd ever had experienced a state of mind where there wasn't any thoughts. It was just pure beingness, pure love, something beyond anything that we generally experience because our mind is generally full of thought. So I was able to have a glimpse or an experience of a revelation. 12 months later, I had an awakening, which was when I got in the shower one morning. Something happened. My mind, it just flipped. I call it flipped. And what happened was I started to experience everything as God. So I was looking around and everything was just God. It was sparkling. It was just completely seen differently. And in that moment, it was like I had a big download of knowledge, and it happened in a second. And I also, in part of that download, was I knew the truth that there is only the Christ here. And I knew that everything was God, and that every one that I met was the pure Christ speaking to me. And there was a knowing. There was like, I think when you're studying A Course in Miracles or any path, there seems to be some doubt that comes and shifts around, and your mind, the ego mind, the conditioned mind, brings in some doubt about what we're listening to, what we're reading. And the doubt went. There was no doubt at all in my mind at that stage. It was like my mind had been completely transformed. And in that moment, it lasted for 3 weeks fully. And it started to phase out towards the end of 3 weeks. And then I think I had my first thought about what was going on. And, So what I came to see later on, looking back, was what was happening was that the ego claims everything. So the ego came in and said, I had an awakening. And I didn't question it at that stage because all I knew was that I was living with this knowledge. And it was very new, and it was very, everything's beautiful, everything's God, everything's one. So I knew that for truth. I knew it. And then something shifted around. So I was going in and out of these states of pure oneness, this love, and then there was this idea about, then there was sort of something else moving in, which was the ego trying to get in. But at that time, I wasn't quite sure. It was just, now I'm very aware that what happens is the ego comes in and claims everything. And at that particular time, there was a person on Facebook that was following my posting, and I was posting about what experiences I was going through. And he came to me and he said, I can help you, you're flickering. So I worked with him for a little while, and one day we were in a conversation and he wrote something and we were writing back and forward, and he kept challenging me. It was like he was poking the bear. He kept poking and poking and poking. And then I wrote something, and when I read it back, as I read it back, my mind just completely blew open to it was like the final seeing. And what I wrote was, there is no me to awaken. And in that, I saw that I had been, even though I'd been experiencing the oneness from the 6 months before, where I had stepped into the shower and everything I'd started to experience this beautiful oneness with everything, and all judgment left, and my mind was very quiet, and it was just really beautiful. It wasn't complete. And the reason why I wasn't complete was because even though I was having an experience, I still had this idea that there was a me having that experience later on. So when I finally, and I'm deeply grateful for the person that came to me and said they would help me, and I did feel to say yes. So, and it didn't take very long. And then once I saw, yes, there's no me to awaken. So there's no me. There's no self that needs to awaken. The self that we think we are is the one that we're not. And that's why I just saw that in that moment. I just had that, and then my mind just went into this no self experience, which sounds funny, but the reason is what happens is we have these experiences and then we try to explain them in terms of language, and there's no other words that can be used to explain those experiences, because they're beyond language, and language is generally, the language is duality. So when our minds go back to oneness and we lose the self, and what happens is when we lose the self that we think we are, what happens is, generally, this is how it's experienced, is there's no self-referencing. So when we go about our life, so my life changed dramatically in terms of everything I did, everyone I met, every situation I was in, there was no commentary from the mind telling me about who that person was, summing them up, summing the situation up. It's like the ego is this sort of background commentator. It's like you've got, say, a sports commentator. So rather than watching what's going on, the commentator's in the mind. I've just noticed that my video may not be in line with my speaking, so I'm sorry if it's not lined up, but maybe I'm hoping that you can still listen and hopefully get something out of this. So I know it's hard. I've had some people write to me over the last couple of years and say they don't understand this no self concept, and it's not something that I would have talked about beforehand, and I'd never really heard it being talked about other than outside Course in Miracles groups. And then when I came across this section of the course, chapter 31, section 5, self-concept versus self, Jesus is pointing directly at this particular teaching, which, as you can see, it's in chapter 31. It's in the last section of the text, and it's right very close to the end of the text. So it is the final scene, but I would like to talk about it because that's what I'd like to teach from the highest level of mind that I've experienced, because I feel that that's the best thing for me to do at the moment, is to speak from what my mind has realised, and my mind has actually realised Christ mind. That's how it is at the moment. And so that was, I think, about 2 or 3 years ago. Those in 2015, I had the awakening, and then a few months later, that saying, "There is no me to awaken," and that line just took my mind straight to the idea that awakening doesn't happen to a self. So what happens is that self falls away. So that's why it's so important to undo the self. And the self that I'm talking about is the ego. So every part of your mind, every belief you have, every judgment you have in your mind is keeping a self in place. And then I came to see, yes, that all beliefs, it's like beliefs create a self. So if you created a robot today and you wanted it to be racist, you would just give it a whole lot of beliefs. If you wanted it to be sexist, you'd just give it some sexist beliefs. If you wanted it to be, what's another belief? And maybe you wanted it to believe that it needed to struggle to get something in life, that it took hard work to obtain anything. That's a belief. Maybe there's even very subtle beliefs about that parents should be certain ways, and that a good parent acts like this and a bad parent acts like that. That's getting down to more subtle levels. And as we undo our major beliefs, we may undo beliefs around, being racist or sexist, or those big major ones. But as you go deeper into your mind, you'll start to see the more subtle ideas of the ego that keeps you believing in a self. So this is my method, I guess, Cate Greaves' method, or the way I practice, or the way I teach A Course in Miracles, is that who you are, who you think you are, is actually just a whole lot of beliefs. And so go into your beliefs, and once you've dissolved them, and whatever help you need through processes, through asking the Holy Spirit or joining with Jesus, those beliefs bit by bit diminish, and you will wake up out of your self-concept, and you will awaken to this oneness. You awaken to this pure awareness of love. There is no way you can stay in a limited mind if you have no beliefs. So Jesus talks in A Course in Miracles a lot about beliefs and how detrimental they are. And that's what I came to see very clearly when I actually had the awakening, was I was able to then, it's like, you know, in the Course where it says the Holy Spirit's at the end of time and he looks back. Well, my mind was able to see how I used to think and how my mind was transformed. And I was looking back and I was saying all those beliefs kept a self-concept in place. So I'd like to read a little bit from A Course in Miracles. I'm just keeping an eye on the time. This is an hour-long session for awakening together. So I'm just pre-recording this because I'm actually doing some work at the moment. I'm unable to do these live at the moment for the next 4 to 8 weeks. So section 5, self-concept versus self. The learning of the world is built upon a concept of the self, adjusted to the world's reality. It fits it well. So as we're born and we're a young child, we create a self-concept. You know, our parents might say, oh, you're pretty, or you're good at sports, or, you know, these people are good, these people are bad. So we learn the world. In this world, we learn about it. And as we learn, the learning of the world is built upon a concept of the self, adjusted to the world's reality, and it fits it well. So I have my beliefs and you have your beliefs, and we've all got our beliefs. And this is how we keep this world that we're living in, which is a false reality, in place. For this, an image is that suits a world of shadows and illusions. So the illusion is that we're separate selves. The truth is that there's only God, there's only love, and the materiality that we're seeing, that it's not that it's an illusion, because there's only God. So if I'm seeing a lamp and that lamp seems separate to me, that's an illusion. What the lamp is God, and so am I. And that's how I'm one with that lamp, and that's how I'm one with everything. So there's nothing here that isn't God. And if every single thing is labelled God, so I've got a pair of sewing scissors here, or so. And so rather than me saying to someone, could you get me the sewing scissors, I might say, could you get me God? Because that's it. So if we took away all the labels from everything here, it would just be God. And that's the oneness. So if nothing has got a different name and nothing is separate to each other, it's all the same. And that's what your mind will wake up to. That's what our minds are waking up to, that God is in everything I see, because God is in my mind. Now, metaphysics say that everything we observe is changing as we observe it, and that on the deepest level, all that's here is the same atoms, and our minds are creating a materiality out of that. And interesting, I've been very interested in metaphysics, even as a young child. Even before I got into the course, I started reading metaphysics books, which was, I don't know why, I was fascinated with it. And what I've come to see, understand through experience, is that even though we're changing things as we view them, we're changing them with our minds. So our minds are powerful. We are actually creating this whole reality. So when your mind is joined back with God's mind, we create with God, and we create love and caring. Anything that comes from this love of God is creative. It has a creative force, and it is creating. Anything that comes from the ego mind, fear, we're creating that as well. And that is being brought into existence through our own mind. That's why cause and effect are not separate. So if I've got fear in my mind, I will see its effects in whatever reality is coming at me. So I'm going to be seeing what is in my mind. It's going to be appearing on the screen of life. That's why it's really important, once you start to understand these teachings, it's very important to commit into undoing your fear in your mind, because what we do is we bring it back into our own mind as to what I'm thinking. It's like my mind is the cause of everything I'm experiencing. So that's really where we need to fully accept that, because once we get upset with someone and we think that they did something to us, we're straight out of peace and we're deluded. That's where the illusion is. So the illusion is that someone is doing something to me and that I'm separate. And the truth is that there's only love, there's only Christ, and we are smack bang in the kingdom of heaven, right here, right now. There's nowhere else to go. We don't have to lay our bodies aside to get to heaven. Heaven is here right now. It's the awareness of perfect oneness. So it's very clear that that Jesus, or the Christ mind that wrote the Course, his teachings are telling us very clearly that through an awakened mind, we will experience the kingdom of heaven in our minds. So therefore, what happens in the world is the world doesn't change. What you will see won't change. Your experience of it will change. And because your mind won't feel threatened by anything of this world, you will be one of the ones that is fearless, is extending love in all situations, because nothing here can threaten you. And you know that as knowledge, you know that as a truth, not just a concept or an intellectual understanding from A Course in Miracles. You know that as a truth. So you are fearless, and you know that who you are can't die and was never born and is eternal and timeless. So that self that is timeless and changeless, and it's a self with a capital S, is what Jesus is talking about here, where he says self-concept versus self. So we have a concept of a self, and that's the ego, versus the self. Now this self, which with a capital S, is who we truly are. And as I said, it's perfect, it's whole, it's changeless, it's timeless, it's innocent, it's guiltless, and you are that now. You are that right now. You've always been that. You will always be that. And you're that now. So your timeless reality, changeless reality, this self, this true self, is where you are now. And then what's happened is it's like a parasite has come into your mind. It's like a liar is whispering to you, and it's whispering you. It's whispering lies to you constantly all day long. And that's why it's called the sleeping or the dreaming, because we are listening to something, to thoughts that are not true. And that's why it says they're not our thoughts. So what he's asking us to do is see that these thoughts are not ours and they're not real, but they seem to be real and they appear to be real. So he's not asking us to deny we have a body, to deny there's other bodies. He's just saying that those other bodies are not separate to you. Now, one thing for me, prior to my mind waking up and having a different experience, I believed that I was separate, and I saw separation. I was purely an egoic mind, and all I did was spend 2 years working on my beliefs. I trawled through every single belief that I had in my mind, and I offered it up to the Holy Spirit or Jesus. And some of them were, there's no hierarchy of illusions, but I did believe some were harder than others. But as Jesus says to us, that's just our conditioned mind or our egoic mind saying that this is a harder one to shift than others. So getting back to this part of the text, which is really beautiful, because if you do like Ramana and you do like Muji and you do like a lot of the non-dual teachers and you listen a lot to them, this section of the course will really, you'll really like reading it and listening to it, because it really seems to marry in with those, the way those non-dual teachers express the awakened mind, that who you are is not the self that you think you are, and that self, all you need to do, well, the course says that we undo our beliefs. So undoing is salvation. But the final seeing, it's like we don't know. Our minds are upset. We think there's got to be a different way. There's got to be a better way than living like this. So there's sort of something prompting us to go and seek out a teaching. And then as we come to it, we study it and we apply what we're learning. But slowly through those, doing the lessons and reading the texts and reading books around it and listening to teachers, we start to undo the beliefs that we've got in our mind. And as I said before, it's one thing that the way I teach is the beliefs are keeping the self-concept in place. It's the beliefs. And that's why Byron Cate works on the beliefs. There's a lot of teachers that really go into your beliefs. So if you are having trouble with waking up, the best thing to do is to see what grievances I'm still holding on to, what judgments I'm still holding on to from anywhere in my childhood, now, anyone, anytime, any grievances, any opinions, any judgments, any fear, any guilt, anything. Even a friend said to me the other day that they'd undone lots of things around their family and friends and work colleagues, and the one thing they were facing now is fear of financial ruin or fear of the body dying. And there's a lot of beautiful teachings in the Course in Miracles about the obstacles to peace, and one of them is the fear of God and fear of death. And I think it even says something around the fear of death is the last to go. I think I was really lucky because when I started the course, I didn't fear death at all. And maybe that's why it was easier. in terms of how quick it was for me to go from committing into the course to awakening within 2 years. I don't know, but that's the only thing I can think of, is that when I started those 2 years, was that I wasn't scared of death. Death didn't scare me at all. I can't tell you why I wasn't scared of death. And the other thing that I mentioned, if anyone is listening to this and they do have an extreme fear of death, and most egos do, because the ego actually convinces you that you're a body. And it convinces you that if you die, if the body dies, you die. And so it convinces you that it is you. So it's like this parasite has got into our mind and it's convinced us we're somebody that we're not. And then we spend our lives trying to be a better someone we're not. So we're not this self-concept, but we go to self-help seminars, we dress better, we do our hair better, we try to get a better job, a better partner, all to feel better for a self that we're not. So the self-concept in our minds is kept together by the belief that there is a self here. I was just going to say about death. What I felt really helpful on my journey, if you are struggling with fear, constant fear of death, is to read some near-death experiences books, because what that really helped me, and what I came to see was that when people were explaining how they were lying on, on a doctor's in the emergency room, and they could see their body lying there, and they were unconscious, and they had this beautiful experience of the oneness and the love, and they just said they were just so free. And Anita Munjari's Dying to Be Me is a fantastic book if you're really concerned about if your ego is really holding you hostage to this idea of death. And it's beautiful. So she was above her body, and when she looked down, and what came to me when I was reading her book was, where were the eyes? So if we're meant to be seeing with our eyes, how could she be looking down in her mind and seeing a body, and then have all these experiences and go off and then come back into the body, join back into the body, and then continue what looks like seeing out of her eyes? You see? So as the Course says, you're never seeing out of your eyes and you're never hearing out of your ears. So that's proof, when you start to read these near-death experiences, that what we're actually doing is we're believing that we are this person, and we believe that our eyes and ears are reporting things back. But the truth is that all there is God, all there is love, and that's the experience of it's hard to explain, but it's an experience not of this world. So you're experiencing an expansive mind that's not attached, even though it seems to still be in a body, it's not attached to being this body. And it knows it's not this body. So as I'm talking to you, I know that I'm speaking from this character named Cate, but the character's in a dream or a virtual reality. But the truth is, there's a truth here. There is a reality here, and that's we're all one. So that's why I know that everyone that I meet, including animals and even trees, every single thing here is life. Nothing is dead. It's all life. It's all God. It may not get up and be animated, but it it's something. And I'm probably not making sense because I don't quite know how to explain this. And that's why that's that's why it's so difficult to find the words to express what the experience is. So anyway, if you have got any issues about if your ego is really playing a big song and doing a big song and dance about death, go and read those books, because what you see is the mind goes on, and that's why we're not this character. We're not associated with this body. It just seems we are for a short time, located here in this body. And so that's beautiful. And yeah, when Anita came back into her body, all her cancer disappeared within a week or two. And that's why anything that you've got troubling you in your body is coming from your mind, the guilt in your mind. It's got nothing to do with your body, because your body is a projection from the mind. So the mind can go out of your body and it can come in. So that's why you see those near-death experiences, they come in and they come out. So getting back to the self-concept versus self, I'll just read again. I'll start again and I'll just read a little bit. The learning of the world is built upon a concept of the self adjusted to the world's reality. So we adjust ourselves to the world's reality. We think there's a reality here and we adjust. The ego adjusts us constantly to this reality. It fits it well. For this, an image is that suits a world of shadows and illusions. Here it walks at home where what it sees is one with it. The building of a concept of the self is what the learning of the world is for. This is its purpose, that you come without a self and make one as you go along. You see how we make a self as we go along. So, you know, when we're younger, we're so free of even an idea about ourselves. Like we're as children, we're not sort of self-conscious. That's why children are so beautiful. They've generally got so much innocence and they're so free and they just say whatever they think. And by the time you reach maturity, you have perfected it to meet the world on equal terms, at one with its demands. A concept of the self is made by you. It bears no likeness to yourself at all. So he's saying here the concept of the self is made by you. And he means you as in the ego you. So what's happening is the ego is our thought system. And that's all. It says in the Course that the ego is thoughts. So the thoughts come in, I am like this, and we believe it. So there's always two steps. The thought comes in and we believe it. And that seems to happen very automatically, but you don't have to believe the thoughts. And that's why inquiry is good. Byron Katie's or whatever inquiry you want to do, make sure you question all those thoughts, because if you're believing them, they come in, you believe them, you will react. And it bears no likeness to yourself at all. So if someone calls you ugly or you think I'm ugly and you believe it, you haven't questioned it, because how could the pure Christ be ugly? Ugly, you know, Christ is Christ. It's not ugly or beautiful. It's the most amazing, holy thing you've ever seen. And that's what we are. So to even have the thought, I am ugly, that creates an idea that there's a self here to be ugly. And you see how this is so quick. The mind says, there's a thought, I'm ugly. We believe it. We don't query it. We don't say, how can I be ugly? Because who I am is the holiest thing in the universe. I'm so holy and I'm divine. I'm divinity. I'm created. I'm an idea in the mind of God. Who I am is the most beautiful, magnificent, amazing, holy, perfect reality. And so once we query that, but as I said, once we believe that thought, we've created a concept of a self, because you can't have something believing it's ugly if you haven't got a concept of a self. So there has to be, I am a me, I am a person, and then that's the first step, and then I must be ugly. So the only way you can believe a thought that I am ugly is if you believe there is a self to be ugly. So this is why the self is created from that thought or believing a thought. And so that's why every belief has to be questioned. And when it goes, it's another thing that's taken off. And in the end, there's nothing left. And the self that you think you are, the self-concept, will completely disappear. And who the true self is, expansive, spacious awareness as a mind, you will be so joyful and so happy, because God's will for you is perfect happiness. So God is willing us to undo the false self, the egoic self, that the thought system that we are just constantly believing in, and it's a whole pack of lies. And what we've done is we've believed it, and we're believing it and believing it and believing it, and we're creating a self, and this self has to defend, it has to attack, and we need to be constantly vigilant to undo these thoughts, and then that in turn undoes a self-concept. So a concept of the self is made by you. It bears no likeness to yourself at all. It is an idol. So if I get upset with someone calling me ugly, or if I'm upset that I am ugly, so first of all, I've got a concept that I am a self, and so I couldn't believe that I'm ugly if I didn't think I had a self to be ugly. But it's an idol, because if I didn't idolize myself, I wouldn't get upset with the thought that I'm ugly. So there's all these little intricate steps in our mind that we're unaware of. And this is really good, because you've got to question. You've got to go deeper in all these thoughts that are coming in. We have to be really, it's like the mind training that we're going through with the Course in Miracles. We're getting clearer and clearer, seeing how our mind works and how subtle the ego is. And it creates a self, and then it's created, that self is kept in place by these thoughts, believing these thoughts and idolizing the self that we think we are. We've created an idol. It is an idol made to take the place of your reality as a son of God. So who we are is divine love, and we've created a idea of a self because we want to be God. So this ego comes in and says, hey, you can be God, and I want you to completely forget your divinity. And we agreed with that. We thought it would be a great idea to be, and then we felt guilty, but it was all really hidden. But you will find, as you undo your ego, all the teachings of the Course will just get so illuminated in your mind. At first, when I've read the Course, it sounded preposterous. I just thought, this cannot be true, that there's a tiny mad idea, and that all time that we didn't even separate from God, and I had all these concepts, but I just kept working with it. Now, with the Course, all you need to do is constantly apply it. Just constantly keep going with it. And you will awaken. You will. And when I say you will awaken, the thing is you already are, but you've got some blocks. We have blocks in our minds. I had blocks in my mind. You've got blocks in your mind. If you didn't have blocks, you'd be awake now, because that's your natural state. Being awakened is the most natural, simple state of mind. I live in this state of mind 24/7 and have lived like that for many years now. And it's the most natural state, a complete mind that is fearless, and happy, joyful, loving, open-hearted, gentleness, tolerance, all those, the 10 characteristics of a teacher of God. That's what you live in. You live in joy. There's no striving to be happy. You are happy. You're connected with everybody, everything. It's a whole completely different experience of this world. And there's no, as he says in the course, why would you want to go anywhere else? Because you're completely happy. So there's nowhere to go. But all you've got to do is see the false for false. That's why he says the truth is true. All you need to do is see what's false. But you're believing it's true, and that's okay. So we're just going to keep working on our beliefs, and we're going to keep working on our thoughts. And if you're happy, you don't need to work on your thoughts. Just be happy. But the minute you get upset, you've believed a thought, and you have got a belief in your mind, and therefore you need to see that it's false. It's completely false, because no belief is ever true. And I had that actual expansion in my mind, that no belief is true. So everything you think is not true, and you're believing it into reality, or we are, our minds are, and the joint mind. So the concept of the self the world would teach is not the thing that appears to be, for it is made to serve two purposes, but one of which the mind can recognise. The first presents the face of innocence, the aspect acted on. It is this face that smiles and charms and even seems to laugh. So this is the ego, sweet, charming. We present a beautiful face of innocence to the world, because we know how dreadful and unworthy we feel. And so this is the dual side of the ego. Because we feel so unworthy, the ego's, we present ourselves this sweet, innocent, loving, kind. I'm just going to do this, and so this is the first presents the face of innocence, the aspect acted on. It is the face that smiles and charms and even seems to love. It searches for companions, and it looks at times with pity on the suffering, and sometimes offers solace. And remember, that's false empathy. Chapter 16 has a really great section on true empathy. And there's nothing to offer solace to, because why offer solace to the perfect Christ that's in front of you? All you need to do is see that he is the perfect, innocent Son of God. And all you need to do with true empathy is to love, open-heartedly love that person as they truly are. And that's true empathy. It believes that it is good within an evil world. So, yeah, the ego thinks that, and that sentence, isn't that a classic? It believes it's good within an evil world. And there you see how wars are started in this reality and this false reality, because the ego thinks that it's good. So, the Americans think that they're good, and the Muslims think that they're good, and the evil ones are the other ones. And so the good thing about any time you think about war, I'll just check the time so I don't go over. Anytime you think about war and you get upset about it, just remember that the ego is nothing and bodies can't die. So those two beautiful concepts, or the truth, it's actually the truth, it comes from the Course. So if you have a look back in history, the history in this dynamic of this world, what's going on, is that there's been lots of egoic wars, ego hating, ego attacking and defending, and people dying, and wars and things like that. And so with the, I'm going to explain this so it's really clear. I don't want to rush over this because it's an important point, is that if we're not bodies and we're spirit and we're everything everywhere, when we get upset that people are dying in wars, of course we have to be open-hearted, and we're not asked to be cold. But what we need to see is that if this is a true teaching, that we are not bodies. but we seem to be in bodies. So we need to be compassionate, but we need to understand that the ego, even the egos killing other egos, believing their bodies, and everyone's protecting their bodies, egos killing other egos goes nowhere, does nothing, because the ego is nothing and doesn't exist. So anytime we see something like that, we're seeing something that seems to be real but has no reality, because the only reality is God or love. That's the only reality. So if you were beating yourself up about something you did in the past, I can assure you it's done nothing and gone nowhere, because nothing the ego ever does has any reality. The only reality that that has any truth is when you come from this Christ love, and that's all there is. And when you awaken, you'll know that as a truth. But how I act in the world is very appropriate. I'm very compassionate, and I donate to things, and I'm very aware that there can be deep suffering. But I know that on one level it goes nowhere doing nothing, but I don't deny my reality here as a child of God with other minds that are suffering. So I offer whatever help I'm guided to offer. And this is something that we have to learn. We have to learn how to be compassionate in this world, and we have to love. And the way to change this world is to change ourselves. And through changing ourselves, we are the light of the world for others to change themselves. And as each person's mind is shifted into this love and shifted out of the self-concept and into the expansive Christ-conscious mind, the mind of God, and love just emanates from your mind to all other minds, and hugs and loves and helps and sees everyone's interest as the same as yours. Their interest is to wake up to who they truly are, to this love within. So this aspect can grow angry, for the world is wicked and unable to provide the love and shelter innocence deserves. So we're talking about the ego, the way it looks out and gets angry. And so this face is often wet with tears at the injustices of the world, accords to those who would be generous and good. And this is a really good part of the course. It says that how justified the ego feels, and it feels that it's so good and it's just does everything the right thing, and oh, I did this and I did that, and look at them and they did this wrong, and so even that is the ego. This aspect never makes the first attack, but every day 100 little things make small assaults upon its innocence, provoking it to irritation and at last to open insult and abuse. And you'll see lots of egos pretending to be very loving and kind, and in the end it's just the same ego. It's the same ego. We all have the same ego. You don't have a special depression or anxiety disorder. It's one ego, and it's got many facets to it, but it's all the same ego, and it can be undone exactly the same way through working with the Holy Spirit, who's the bridge back to the mind of love. So I'll just check the time again. So, okay, coming up to nearly 55 minutes, so I'll finish off here. The face of innocence, the concept of the self so proudly wears, can tolerate attack in self-defence, for it is not a well-known fact. The world deals harshly with defenceless innocence. So this is really good. It's saying that the ego loves to be the defenseless. I'm innocent and I was attacked, and, you know, I was just so, I'm not doing anything, and I was just so loving these people, and these other people came along and, you know, were nasty to me. And this keeps this self-concept in place. No one who makes a picture of himself omits this face, for he has need of it. So the ego's trying to be really innocent, because what it is, it's a murderous, it's a thought, it wants to kill you, it tells you how unworthy you are, how awful you are, and we believe it, and then we make a sweet little face. The other side he does not want to see, yet it is here the learning of the world has set its sights, for it is here the world's reality is set, to see to it the idol lasts. Beneath the face of innocence there is a lesson that the concept of the self was made to teach. It is a lesson in terrible displacement, and a fear so devastating that the face that smiles above it must forever look away. So what we're taught is to look away from what we think we've done and how bad we think we are. But what we're told in the course, we have to look at it. We have to look, we have to turn around, and we have to stare in the face the things that we don't want to acknowledge in our minds. And this is where we have to do. We have to turn around and do exactly what the ego says. The ego says, don't go there, don't look at that, keep you smiling, la la la, how wonderful am I? The lesson teaches this: I am the thing you made of me, and as you look upon me, you stand condemned because of what I am. So this just so relates to me. This is exactly what I was like. I am the thing you made of me. So when I felt my dad didn't help me, and I said, right, and I got depressed and I got sick, and in my mind I was, see, you made me this way, you did this to me, and you stand condemned because of how sick I am. So unconsciously I had to unravel all this on my journey, but we're asked to be brutally honest and bring everything. So on this conception of the self, the world smiles with approval, for it guarantees the pathways of the world are safely kept, and those who walk on them will not escape. So anyway, I've got through 5 sections of that there, but there's some really good, I might finish on that next week. There's some really good teachings in that. So I'll just finish up going on for another few minutes here. Just to confirm what we're talking about is who you think you are with the ego. The ego is a self-concept, and it's made of beliefs. So undo all your beliefs, see through them all. You don't have to get rid of the ego. You only need to see that its thought system is false. That's all you need to do. Just look at the thoughts and see them as false. And when you see them as false, they'll drop away. And as each belief and each thought drops away, you start to become freer and freer. And then before you know it, there will just be an awakening. And you'll see that I am not those beliefs. There's no me. The me that you think you are will just completely fall away, because the beliefs are gone. So that's the way I would encourage you to attempt to undo what is false. And that's all it does. All these blocks are is believing them. We believe them, and we're not looking at them and seeing that they're false. All right, so I'll love you and leave you. And it's coming up to 59 minutes. So thank you, and I'll finish with my blessing. I love you, I honour you, and I bless you. And who you are is the perfect Christ. You are holy. And I bless you with my holiness, and I receive your holiness. So we are one. We are one in mind. Thank you, and I love you. Bye-bye.